Yeah, so NewDad, I mean, for me, if there hadn't been a couple of great Barry Can't Swim EPs over the last couple of years, New Dad would have probably placed top of my EPs. Waves, perfect 5 songs. Banshee, perfect 5 songs. And it was kind of fun to go back and read my uh, reviews for those EPs that I had wrote in 2021 and 2022. Because 2021, after Waves, I said, well, I hope there's a LP on the way soon. And then we got another EP and it was perfect. And the same thing I said again, give me more of this. So to say that MADRA was highly anticipated would be an understatement to me. Um, and overall, uh, I like it quite well. Um, I don't think it's as consistent as those 5 song EPs are. Um, there's a little bit where it drags here, which I'll get into in a minute. But I once again I said this to you guys on WhatsApp when it's like Angel, Sickly Sweet, Where I Go, Change My Mind, like that start there, I think is just as good as the EPs, if not better in some cases. Um, Especially Sickly Sweet, which I just uh there's all these different approaches to the 90s going on right now. And that song especially, it just reminds me of like a great garbage record that not without the electronic element, but just has that Shirley Manson kind of hook to it, that really pulls me in. And then it's kind of after that where things for me, I just kind of lose interest in my head. My note on that again is it was like it sounds like a high school talent show or something like that. It's just not of the quality I was hoping for out of New Dad. And overall, I know Karl, you're going to have something else to say about the back half of this record, but for me, it's just kind of where it falls apart. And Julie Dawson's voice, I think, obviously on the EPs was the centerpiece, and it still is on this record. I'm not sure if it's the production or just the song strength, but especially in that back half, her um, vocal melodies just become kind of monotonous to me, and I can't pull one from the other. There's some different things musically going on with each song, but I feel like she's just kind of doing the same thing over and over. What it really had me thinking about was comparative to like now. I don't know if you guys were ever familiar with them, but 2012 great debut record. I can't remember the singer's name. She's going to be on the new Owen record doing backing vocals. But it was the thing that pulled me in with Now was her voice and the atmospheric textures that they made. And then it was also kind of the thing that made me lose interest in Now as their later albums came out, was that just kind of the same thing over and over with the vocals. And so at this point, New Dad, uh, I don't think Madra touches the highs of the EP. It is a little glossy, as you guys know. When I saw that they'd signed to Atlantic, I was kind of worried about it because while I'm glad that Atlantic is doing something like that, there's an album for next month that we're going to talk about that it's nice to have the major labels putting out some interesting guitar music again. But in this case, the sheen to it just kind of, I miss the rawness of the EPs, and yeah, just kind of lost in that monotony. So I think with those EPs, when's the full length debut? I guess my question for NewDad now is, what does their sophomore album sound like? Because I think they've explored the dream pop kind of shoegaze sound plenty at this point, and just kind of interested to hear what else they could do.
Karl, what are your thoughts on MADRA?
Yeah, so similar to Kiley, really. This was a debut I've been looking forward to for a while now. Their Banshee EP was one of the first that I reviewed for Gigwise, and kind of been following since that point. Went back to obviously Waves in the process of researching and writing for that article. Obviously, the fact that they're from Galway, which is where all my family are from, kind of added that extra level of intrigue to them as a band as well. But yeah, like Kylie, big fan of that EP. I think I gave it a 9 out of 10 when I reviewed it. Really kind of stuck with me straight away. So yeah, a lot of expectation on this debut, as kind of alluded to, maybe too much expectation. And I've kind of landed on enjoying it without necessarily being blown away. That's sometimes how it goes. You have, new bands come through that kind of come straight out of the gate, deliver an exceptional first album, and then, go on to spend their whole career trying to match it or better it, and either doing that or not quite being up to snuff. Then you have, others that, gradually grow into their career. And I think based on this album, NewDad will probably fall into the latter. They're still very young. I think this is it's basically an album that shows promise of what could be and what can come, rather than, here's the finished article. Kind of as Kylie said as well, I don't think there's any real standout moments in particular. There's no glaring horrors either. It's kind of just fine without that sounding
Safe.
Yeah, without that sounding too harsh. But in terms of favorites, I love Angel. Those are atmospheric guitars just pack a punch, which is kind of what you want from an opening track on a debut album. Where I Go as well in that first half, it's got those stinging riffs on the chorus that I really dig. I love how, like, the verses, it's almost like soft spacey moments, and it like gently walks you through those, and then when it comes to the chorus, it just throws you into those big rock riffs. And I think that's a really great track as well. But yeah, as you mentioned, Kylie, I think where you kind of switch off at the back end, that's where the interesting stuff happens for me. Those final 3 tracks, Nightmares, White Ribbons, and then the title track is probably my favorite. Nightmares just got a great kind of pop groove to it. If you listen to like bands like Pale Waves, it's kind of like a slightly more shoegaze version of what they've been doing. But yeah, these misty kind of swirling guitars going on. Just a really catchy, really moody track. That again, I found myself going back to. White Ribbons, it stands out, I think, because it's the most minimal on the record. It's just Julie Dawson's kind of ghostly vocals, and then those isolated guitars. And then towards the end, there's like brief flourishes of synths that kind of come through, but never quite, take off like it does on the other tracks. And I quite liked that was kind of like the most unique track, where, the first half, they're kind of exploring the same sounds. White Ribbons kind of stood out by in its kind of minimalism towards the back end. And then I think, the title track, as I said, is my favorite. I think it's a solid ending and a good base to build on going forward. The outro to that song is just fantastic. I think it's going to absolutely cook in a live setting, especially that, short, sharp riffs on the chorus. You know, it's got the hypnotic swaying on the verses. So similar to Where I Go, I think those moments where, you know, it jumps from quiet and soft to then loud and brash, I think that's when they're kind of at their best at this record. Those quick changes in sound and pitch is where it kind of grabs me. So yeah, overall, this records that I've been enjoying without loving, as much as I expected to anyway. And I find myself maybe dipping back into songs rather than necessarily wanting to play the whole thing again front to back. But yeah, in terms of those guys, a solid start without maybe being a jaw-dropping one.
Enjoying without being blown away. I think that is a good way of summarizing it. Or, you know, going to go for a kind of coined rhyme, you know, NewDad, not bad, is maybe where we are with this. So yeah, it's one of those which and I wasn't familiar with them before the choice, but saw a lot of things about NewDad and was quite excited as ever when there's a kind of a debut album coming out. Always a joy. And I generally, with a lot of these albums, give or take some illness in between where I just couldn't listen to anything. Found this one kind of not, I wasn't getting the character of it when I just play it kind of in the background. Well, like I like to do a few times before I then really sort of zone in. So it just didn't kind of leave a mark in those first few listens. But when actually sort of listening and looking at the lyrics, it became a lot better. And yeah, I would go more with the second half being, well, or actually the middle. if we're going to have a complete, you know, give Kiley the start, give me the middle, give Karl the end, and we're all happy. The middle in the sense of in my head, which I know, Kiley, you weren't too impressed with, but that's one of my two favourites along with Let Go. And I thought it was a bit Churches-like. I really liked how it built. About two people drifting apart. I mean, the whole album is very relationship heavy in terms of the lyrical content, and I think that's an element of it where we talk about repetition perhaps with this album. It can kind of grate a little bit when you get towards the back end, but actually that's where I think some of the better songs come in. And then yeah, Let Go, which I really like, the grunge, loud, quiet composition, and that kind of claustrophobic, kind of uncomfortable atmosphere which they create, which seems to be a very signature kind of move for a lot of the Irish guitar bands. You know, the Murder Capital, as you know, one of my favourites with their soundscapes. I think they're very good at doing that. A band who I'm less keen on, but have that effect is Just Mustard. They do a lot with kind of this guitar atmosphere building creation with their songs. So it does seem to be a bit of a signature thing, not to label all by the same label in Ireland, but that's what they seem to have. And I think, you know, they can easily be put into a similar category, and it's just a really vibrant time for Ireland, I would say, in terms of, you know, young guitar bands. Spoke about Sprints at the top. So yeah, I think this is a really promising one, obviously without knowing the background of the EPs and how stunning they were, particularly for you, Kiley. So I think that's probably worth interrogating to sort of see where their high points are. And yeah, a band definitely to look out for when it comes to the difficult second album, of course, and see whether they can move away from that shoegazy dream pop signature sound, which is ever present here. But yeah, good, not fantastic in my book.